me to do when I asked if I could meet some of the board and show you some things throughout the park. She asked me to take pictures. So I did. I've spent quite a bit of time taking pictures. So I was just curious, when could I make an appointment or schedule a time to where I can give you guys a slide presentation at a board meeting?
Yeah, we do in 2 weeks. I would suggest that the pictures get forwarded to staff. If you want to send those to Alan, we'll review them and then put together information for the board.
Okay. And then we'd be able to play where I can explain them, or?
Yeah, the first step probably is to meet with Alan and I, and then we can figure out the next course of action for the board. I mean,
Okay.
the park really is an operational item,
Okay.
so we would be happy to meet with you and talk about it.
Okay, great, thank you. And then one other thing is, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but the information on how to load and unload and use the rides plays 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's really annoying at night. I live a quarter of a mile away from here, and it's coming right up my street, and I can hear it in my place. So I'm just curious if we could take and shut the recording off at closing and start it at 10 o'clock in the morning. Because, it's rude.
So, Jim, we can certainly look into that as well.
Okay. Alrighty, great. And that's my thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next in public comment, and Art, I think I'm going to mess up your name. Go for it. I'm not sure if that's an L or a B. It's a B. Okay, so Art Dubois? Real close. Debut. Okay, Art, it's your opportunity. Okay, no supper allowed.
Okay, I bring a little bit different perspective. You folks were aware that you had a fire down there July 5th in the park.
Which park are you talking about?
Down here in Carson's Park.
Carson's Park?
Yep, west and south of Waterworld.
Yeah, I am unaware of a fire.
Oh, you're not aware of it? Okay. Mr. Jim Fenimore saved your bacon. He happened to be driving down Rampart Street, and we got to 90th Avenue. He looked over there, and he saw the smoke and the flames. So he notified the Federal Heights Fire Department, and they jumped right on it and put the fire out. I'm a retired volunteer firefighter, spent 10 years with, almost 11, 10 years with Federal Heights and 10 years with Southwest Adams County. Most of it's structural fire, and but I had the privilege of being in the Black Tiger Mountain Fire, forest fire, west of Boulder a number of years ago when I was on Southwest Adams County. We were asked to bring in one of our units to help back up because Gold Hill personnel and everybody up there in all those little mountain towns was down there on that fire. And so I've got a little bit of background on wildland fires. But you folks are lucky. One, Jim spotted it in time, and the fire department was on top of it in time. There's a burned area, and I've got pictures, and Jim's probably got some pictures. He got way more pictures than I got. And but if there had been about a 10, 15 mile an hour breeze, that fire would have headed east. And Waterworld, you had a pretty good crowd there. Now, the fire danger would not be the issue, but the smoke inhalation, all those people, that could have been a big issue. So you were fortunate there. I've been down there and looked, and basically what you've got is an area that is got a lot of fuel load, and it really needs to be cleaned up. We've got pictures showing that fuel load. Jim's got a lot of it. And we've talked about that. We've mentioned about going down along that area, a visionary thing, and getting it cleaned up and improving over a 10, 15-year plan. We've got some ideas. But getting that fire load reduced should probably be a number one priority. And it's our understanding that there may be federal funds available to help reduce the fuel load. And that's something we could, maybe you folks could look into, or Jim and I could help you in that area, do a little more research and see what might be available. But that's one of the things that needs to be taken care of. Another thing that concerns me is the fact that it's been badly neglected. The bridge down, yes, ma'am. That park area down there, Carson's Park, specifically around the pond. There is used to be a bridge. Well, the bridge is still there, but it's been blocked off because it's deteriorated. And there used to be a bridge over that. That's in terrible shape. It's just not repaired. It's just blocked off so somebody doesn't walk on it. And also the walkway going over the dam, concrete is broken up, and so that's a problem. And the pond itself is full of algae. There used to be water circulated, aerated to help keep that from building up, but that pond has got a lot of algae in it. And while we were down there, there were other areas that are mosquito infested. It's a breeding ground for mosquitoes. Not a good thing. The spillway, just downstream of the spillway, I don't know what it is. It looks like concrete, whether it's a dumping ground for concrete or whether there was a concrete spillway that is deteriorated and it's broken up. Picnic tables are unusable. Some of it, one of them's bent. Access to them is very poor. There's a lot of things that could be done down there to improve that area. And the park, the ground itself, the grass is almost non-existent. It's just weeds. It's been neglected. And I filled out a questionnaire here a while back that you folks put out. And unfortunately, I had to answer that I would vote against. The reason being, I question whether or not you're maintaining what you've already got, and you're looking at doing some expansion and improvements and additions and stuff. And I think there was only 10% of the budget to maintain. And looking at that park area down there, I'm talking about 10, 15, maybe even 20-year outreach in developing that area down there. Jim and I, what some of the things we've come up with. But right now, I don't know if you can even get in there and mitigate the fuel load, the fire danger, the potential. If you got a fire down in there and you got a breeze going, like I said, 10, 15 mile an hour, that would have gone all the way probably to Pecos. And if you got 25, 30 mile an hour winds blowing, the fire brands, it would jump Pecos, go on the other side. That would be bad news. That's my experience as an old retired volunteer firefighter. So thank you for your time.
Art, thank you. I think if you have some of those pictures, just like with Jim, if we can get those to our staff, they can take a look at it and contact you as needed.
Okay.
And take a good look at it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Art,
Thank
I
you.
want to tell you thank you for filling out that
What?
Magellan survey that came to you.
Well, you're most welcome.
That is very helpful for us to make decisions.
I'm an old problem solver. I complain about things, but I don't do it without seeing solutions. That's who I really am. So If I'm complaining about something, I've got ideas for solutions as well. Thank you again.
Yeah, and I think a bigger issue that you bring up is maybe we need to, as a board, think about what type of fire mitigation strategies we have at our parks, kind of like water conservation, and what we're doing is fire mitigation might be another part of that equation.
Thank you, Art. It's very timely as we're getting ready to start looking at capital improvement and well as our strategic plan. So it's perfect timing. All right, Deputy Director Beck.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to introduce J.R. Clanton. He is one of the lead consultants with Barry Dunn, who has led the process on our strategic plan. We are very excited to get to this point. This has been over a year in the making, so we're pleased to present to you the final draft of our strategic plan. So with that, I will turn it over to J.R.
Thank you. Okay. Hello, it's good to see you all again. I've been here a few times now, and I've also had the pleasure of working with your staff several times throughout this process. And today,
Welcome back.
Thank you. And today is a fun day. This is, it is a presentation of the plan. There's nothing new in here. You all have seen this content. It is a celebration, and it is a time to give some final input and direction on it before we send it to the printers and start the process of implementing. So, just again, what we're trying to accomplish with this strategic plan, it's a 10-year guide for how the district should invest its resources. It provides the framework that really allows you all to set policy direction in a planned out, thoughtful manner that is supported through the public you all serve. And I guess I should say that some key elements that were informing the strategic plan was a pretty extensive engagement process, which we'll go over in a bit, but also enterprise and enterprise facility, entertainment facility assessments, and a financial and funding analysis. And so it is a well-informed strategic plan. And over the course of the last year, through these presentations, you've got to see the red circle around each one of those steps in the process, and we are now at step 5, draft and final plan.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
There's that celebration.
I know. Good job, team. So, and then just some of the recent sessions. We've been giving updates. We've done visioning sessions with you all. We've been working with staff. And these are some of the key dates and some of the meetings we've been at throughout this process. So as you look at the plan, you're going to see some acknowledgments of everyone who's helped participate, and that's really an emphasis on the fact that this was community-centered planning. And so just a huge thanks to the staff, the project advisory committee, to really helped organize this effort. This process had an incredible amount of community engagement, and you can see up there just the total number of touch points. But again, a lot of effort went into reaching people. We were present throughout the community. We did extensive online engagement. We did interviews. We did focus groups. We did all sorts of social media campaigning. And so we really made a huge effort to get out and hear from the community. And this really is the community authority and community input that gives authority to a lot of the priorities that are laid out in the strategic plan. And I like this slide because it talks about the different community partners, so local governments, school districts, facility users, community stakeholders, as well as focus group meetings with targeted populations and organizations. And then the map that you see on the right is where we actually had public engagement. And so you can see how we were located throughout the district service area. Again, trying to have both great reach, but also making sure we had geographic equity in our approach. So the document itself, when you read through the document and it's published, you'll see how it's organized basically into these 4 sections. And really, I'm just going to go ahead and skip to the actual content here, but it basically sets priorities for the next 10 years, and that sets the focus areas. It confirms the language that the department or the district uses to describe itself, its vision and its mission. And then again, it outlines the process that went through to create the plan. So that, you know, over the life of this document, again, what went into making the plan is highlighted. Yeah.
So when you're looking at that one, so
Yep.
when you look at where we're at in the same stages of the planning process,
Mm-hmm.
we get to phase 6.
Yes.
So we're right at 5, I think phase 5,
Mm-hmm.
final plan. So then we have to have implementation.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through the entire plan, and I didn't see any recommendations for, hey, what's the best way to implement this plan? And so I'm wondering, what are the best ways to implement this plan?
Absolutely. So we do an implementation workshop with staff as part of this planning process, which is basically covers how do we take a strategy document and turn it into the actions that the district staff are going to be performing over each year of the plan. And a lot of that is tied through the budget process. The budget process and the implementation process and planning process for the year really go hand in hand. And so when budget priorities are being set by the district for the year, the role the strategic plan plays is the staff then have specific sets of action items and priorities to inform the investments they recommend get funded in the plan.
But before that, would you have maybe, and this is one of the things that came out in the plan, is you have a capital initiative, a CIP, a capital investment plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I guess when I'm going through and figuring out a tactical implementation for this strategic vision, then we have, in order to make that happen, we have to have a capital improvement plan, which then addresses a lot of the feedback that we got from the community to invest in our parks and go through and do all of that. How does that, like, I'm wondering if you give kind of like tactical implementation advice of saying, get a capital improvement plan, get a strategic committee that you have a board sponsor with, then you meet quarterly or semi-annual, so a real tactical implementation.
I mean, I noticed in the strategic plan, one of the pages was, here's the recommendation of the priorities for improvements, maintenance, and so on, and it listed it by year. So I think it's really taking that schedule and tying it to the budgeting process each year to start checking off items on that list.
I did see that, and then there's actually the legends that go with that say, if you get 3 of those attributes, then that like kind of jumps to the top of the list. Does that happen? And so I'm just wondering, because there's so many and there's not enough money for all of them, then there has to, well, they're listed, there has to be a prioritization process.
Margaret, at the end of the plan, it actually addresses some of that to say we need to drill down and get more focused on different areas of the plan, and this is what has been missing, and this is what we need to move towards. That's at the end of the plan. So I think that's future work for us to do in certainly a capital improvement process and capital improvement plan. I think that it's laid out very well here what we kind of need to do next, and a lot of that is for the staff to do.
Well, and a lot of it, and you're absolutely right about that, and I did go through that in the capital improvement worksheet. But the one thing that I think we're missing is an overview of here's what a tactical implementation of this looks like. Like we have the capital improvement plan, here's the structure that works, here's the follow-up that works, here's what we've seen, this is how you get it right. And so that would be, just as a tactical person, that's what I see. I think for the board to make decisions, that would be helpful. I don't know if you do that, but that's, as we were going through it, that would be the one recommendation.
Great. Yeah, I think that's great, and I think certainly the implementation workshop that we do with staff can start to address some of those, and then through further work with your staff, I think you can make sure that you are getting the input you need to make the policy decisions related to the strategic plan. So again, the document lays out some priorities for the community to invest in. And so the strategic plan, as you read through it, clearly lays out some of the desired programs, desired park improvements, desired facilities. And then it identifies what we call strategic initiatives, preserving your assets, aligning your services with the needs of the community that are within it, and then providing world-class experiences. And this is where, as you start looking into the implementation strategy and action plan, you're going to start to see action items are being tagged with the icons there, the valued asset icon, the evolving interest icon, the world-class experience icon. And so actions that are in the strategic plan should be contributing to at least one of those initiatives, if not more. Items in the strategic plan are also put into timeline. There's short term, which is 1 to 3 years, midterm, which is 4 to 5 years, and long term, which is 7+ years. Now, as you are going through implementation of this plan in out years, initiatives and priorities can change, timelines can change, and there is flexibility with you all to change when things are happening. But at least from a planning perspective, long-range planning, you can start to lay out what needs to happen, or at least what you would like to have happen, and it's all published here in the document.
I would just like to say that the short-term plan is going to cost a lot of money. Like, we're not going to have that amount of money. So then some of them are going to not be 1 to 3 years. So that's where I think the committee is going to need to go through all of this orange and go, okay, this is year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4.
They have staff focused on that. Right.
Yeah, and then let us know what that looks like and how it's prioritized.
Absolutely. And so here's some examples by location. So Adventure Golf and Raceway, the golf course, Ice Center, parks and facilities, and it's all laid out in the strategic plan.
And these aren't, so you're not prioritizing one facility over the other. They're listed alphabetically.
Yes.
So then when we see Adventure Golf as the first one, that doesn't mean that's our first initiative. That just means it's the letter A. now.
Yes. Yeah.
And
But
so,
that's why we don't number things in strategic plans.
yeah, okay. And so I think it's great. I'm just trying to be mindful of and know where to prioritize based on what's important to them.
Absolutely. And I think this document is very much informed from public input. And I think the accompanying documentation that goes along with this plan and what's in it is pretty robust. And so you have a lot of authority in this document. And that's really it. I mean, the purpose, I'm really just trying to show you what it looks like. The purpose of the presentation was not to go through each of the action items, but that's the content of the strategic plan. And in terms of next steps, we are really just integrating final feedback before we take draft off everything and publish it. With that, we work with staff. We'll do an implementation workshop with staff where we go over best practices for keeping this a functional living document that's present throughout the district's planning and operations. And, and then it's ready to go forward and be part of your community for the next 10 years.
When you did this plan, and I'm sure you've done a couple, what is the biggest takeaway? Like, what, if you were sitting where I'm sitting, what would your take be?
For the plan,
For the plan for us, like steps with the next step and forth.
so I think one of the big takeaways is the 3 strategic planning initiatives. I think those are a really great way for you to communicate what you're doing over the next 3 years. We are taking care of what we own with our valued assets. We are being responsive to what we know will be changing needs and interests of the community over the next 10 years. That's what we're doing with evolving interests. And then we know that we have a fairly unique role in providing world-class experiences. So those 3 strategic planning initiatives, if I had to summarize what the takeaway from the strategic plan is for you as a board, it's that over the next 10 years, we are going to be focusing on those 3 areas.
Any other surprises from the plan that came out?
I think the level of community engagement is pretty impressive, and you should be very proud of it. And so I think if you want to reference the amount of interactions you had, sorry, I'm trying to find the slide, the map, the amount of interactions you had and impressions, like that's something to be proud of. A lot of planning efforts don't get that level of engagement, so it speaks to the responsiveness of your community. It speaks to honestly a lot of efforts of your staff. We can come in and do a bunch of engagement, but the staff has to connect us with the right people and the right audience.
So Margaret, a takeaway for me is that this gives us 3 ways to look through things. Number 1, I think Art will be happy with this, preserving capital assets, number 1. So when we get into our budgeting come September, that's something that the board can kind of keep at that high level and say, does this budget preserve capital assets first? And then are we looking at our other things? And I like the idea of adding some fire mitigation as far as the staff goes. I think that's important too. But I think this is something that the staff then gets, and they go into those implementation pieces, and we're just making sure as a board we're staying at that 50,000 foot level and saying this is what we're asking our staff to do, and then the staff comes back to us and says, are we on the right track or not? If we're not on the right track, then we kind of say, well, let's set up some goals for how do we do this. So how are we budgeting? How are we planning? How are we supporting our staff to make sure that this gets implemented?
And I think the other thing is, because if you go back to all of that orange, and this goes back to the bond measure so we don't have enough. So the way that the districts work is we can't spend money we don't have in 1 year. The only way we can do improvements it's kind of like when you are remodeling your house. You have to borrow the money to remodel your house, unless you're independently wealthy and you can just stroke a check. And so we then know how much capital improvements we need for our parks and our facilities and others, and how much money it's going to require. That's why Art got the survey from Magellan to say, what does this look like, so that we could then put dollars to this plan to meet the community needs. And then really focusing, where do we start with? Because there's a lot of orange.
Underwater World, it's all orange. So we can't do it all at one time, we know that. So that's when it goes back to staff. Staff makes a recommendation of, these are the first things, I guess not all orange, but one is not orange. But if you look at all of them, they are all 3 categories. So to me, as a board member, that says we need to be thoughtful and focused on what are we doing, how are we prioritizing these items for Water World, knowing that we also have other things we need to focus on too. And that happens in the budgeting process.
Yeah, and I think what's helpful for people to know is that Waterworld throws off about anywhere from $6 to $8 million in profit that then we can invest in our parks. And so while we invest money in Waterworld, it generates excess cash so that we can maintenance our other facilities. And so, because if I don't know that as a community member, I'm looking and I'm saying, why is Highland Hills spending so much money on Waterworld when I need this park shelter over here, not knowing that Waterworld is making sure that we'll have that park shelter for 10 years down the road or 2 years down the road. Because without Waterworld, we really don't have any money. So I think it is balancing all of those to make sure that people know that why we're doing what we're doing. So yeah, lots of information.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's exciting. I think it's a really great plan. I think it provides solid 10-year direction, and we're looking forward to working with staff to do the implementation workshop, and then really looking forward to see what you all do over the next 10 years.
JR, thank you so much. I think we ought to give my...
Yeah,
Thank you.
And that also goes to staff, and it also goes to community members that have helped us with everything that we're focusing on, and know that this is just the starting line.
yeah.
The finish line is in 10 years, and that might be pushed out a little bit further as well. But this allows us a really great opportunity to be more focused in where we go.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. This was, when I came into this position, I was like, where's my strategic plan? Where are my priorities? And now I have them. So thank you.
Well, and I just want to say thank you to the board, because you've been very supportive along this process. A couple of you have participated on our advisory committee and have really helped guide this process from start to finish. I've been part of this process a few times in other places that I've worked, and I've never seen the kind of synergy that we've had with the board and the community, as well as the consultants and staff. So it's really all come together, and we've been very intentional along the way that we wanted an action plan out of this process, and we really wanted, in extensive community engagement, and we got all that. So I'm very pleased with the product that we have, and our goal is to make sure it doesn't sit on a shelf. We'll revisit it often, and we had a great conversation this morning with our leadership team, so we want to make sure this is our real guiding document moving forward, and something that we visit often, and looking forward to implementation. So thank you for your support along the way.
Thank you. Yvonne, you're up with Ryan Winger, is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So I'm pleased to introduce Ryan Winger of Magellan Strategies. As you know, the board approved us conducting a survey, a community survey through Magellan, and he is here tonight to present the findings.
Thanks, Yvonne, and thanks, Skylar, for helping me get set up here. I apologize I didn't come as prepared as he did. But yeah, happy to be here and happy to play a small part in what sounds like has been a very long and productive process here with this ballot measure survey, basically testing voter opinion of a potential ballot measure coming up in November. So let's get right into it. This was a survey that was conducted over about a 2-week period from July 15th through the 28th. Over there on the left side, you can see an example of the text that went out to a sample of voters within the district. Kind of important to note, a lot of times clients will ask, well, why couldn't we push it ourselves? Why couldn't we, do everything we could to get as many responses as possible? In this case, we wanted to be conscious that we were getting a representative sample of voters within the district and not just those who use the district or who use the facilities in the district, let alone all those folks who might get contacted who don't actually live in the district and may not know that, right? So there's an example of the text on the left, and we were able to complete 671 interviews with voters within the district. So that gives us a margin of error of 3.77%. So we're pretty confident in these numbers going forward. And just the primary objective, of course, was to measure support and opposition for this financing measure, allowing the district to increase debt by $90 million without a new tax or increase in existing taxes, right? And the survey also educated respondents about those improvements at a not super specific level, but specific enough so that they could kind of get a sense of what's the plan is. And then also measured at the beginning just district job approval, facility and park usage, and then alignment with that strategic plan that we were just discussing. I mentioned that, or I'm not sure if I mentioned, but it's important to note that these results are weighted to reflect what we expect turnout to look like within the district this November. So you see there's about 77,000 registered voters within the district. About 57,000 roughly are going to vote this November, and it's important for us to know just in general terms what that electorate is going to look like so that we can weight the survey results to accurately reflect it. If we just took the survey data and said, okay, sounds good, I always take an extreme example. Let's say 75% of the people who took the survey were over the age of 65. Well, that wouldn't really give us an accurate representation of who's actually going to vote in November. So you see there the demographics, and what you really notice, the big difference between a year like this year and an odd year like next year is a dramatic increase in the 18 to 34 age group, younger voters turning out to vote this year, obviously driven by what's at the top of their ballot, but just important to know that in an odd year, you're going to have much, much lower turnout, in fact, more than half or less than half turnout. So let's get right into it. We wanted to start with just a basic familiarity question. How familiar are you with the district and the programs, parks, and facilities they manage? And this is a solid measurement, right? 2 out of 3 are at least somewhat familiar. You do see 10% who aren't familiar and that 24% who are unsure. So roughly, and I'm sure you all kind of get that a lot. Oh, is it the city managing the park? Is it a rec district? Some people, especially if they're newer residents, might not exactly know what's going on. But 2 out of 3 being at least somewhat familiar is a really good place to be. You see there it is much lower among those who've lived here less than 10 years. Only 10% of them are very familiar. And then, do you approve or disapprove of the job the district is doing? And this is, again, also just very encouraging. We want to ask a question like this just to get a sense of, is there anything underlying in public opinion about the district that's not specific to the ballot measure that we're about to get into that may cause them to vote no? You really don't see that much here. 67% approve of the job you're doing, only 6% disapprove. We didn't want to leave it there, though. We wanted to get a sense of, okay, 2 out of 3 said, yes, I approve of the job you're doing. Well, why? Can you explain a little bit why, the reasons why you approve of the job the district's doing? And here are the 5 main themes. One is just variety and quality of programs and activities, well-maintained facilities and parks, affordability and accessibility, positive experience and good customer service, and community engagement and communication. Those are kind of the 5 kind of shining beacons of those who approve of the job you're doing. Those are the things they appreciate. Among that, only 6%, but among that 6% of who disapprove of the job you're doing, it's things like poor maintenance and condition of facilities in their experience, financial concerns, what they perceive to be inadequate recreational programming and accessibility. That one especially is probably something where they had a program and it went away and they're upset about that. Environmental and safety issues or lack of community engagement and consideration. So the flip side of what we saw on the previous slide, just keep in mind that that was 67% of respondents. This is the 6%.
I did have a question
Yeah.
regarding that. So if you look through the financial concerns and perceived management, it says that the wasteful spending, non-essential projects, including the closure or underfunding of necessary facilities. What facilities have we closed, or the only ones? And then if you also go down to lack of community engagement, and especially regarding the removal of local facilities, that's another comment. I can't think that while I've been on the board, we've removed any assets at all. Is that from prior history?
Yeah, I believe it probably has to do with ProMac as well as the ProMac pool being closed. It may somewhat have to do with closing down the Carol Butts Athletic Park, although that was rebuilt as the sports center, so.
Which dovetails with the strategic plan, because if you go into the strategic plan, one of the most desired things was an indoor recreation center or community center. And so this one's saying, we don't approve that you sold that, and now we want to replace it in our strategic plan. And so it's an interesting correlation.
Sure, yeah, and again, I would just point out that this is 6% of respondents, right? So, I would caution on reading too much into it. I think there's probably, there may also be some confusion where a city park got closed or something happened that you all aren't even responsible for, and yet, among this very small cohort, you're taking the blame for. So I would caution against reading too much into it as like juxtaposing it with the strategic plan, so. We also wanted to get a sense, among these voters, how often they use each of the facilities within the rec district. And so you see here kind of roughly ranked in terms of, okay, do they never use a facility? So even, Waterworld, Adventure Golf, which are near the top there, 45% of respondents say they never use those 2 facilities. We kind of wanted to get a sense of among this larger group of voters, how much are they, not necessarily how much they appreciate or approve of the job you're doing, but how much they actually use these things, because it's kind of difficult for a rec district such as yourselves to get a true sense of usage. If you're only interviewing people who come in through the doors, that's one thing, but this is trying to get a broader sense of, okay, among the general public, what are we talking about in terms of usage? And at the same time, kind of along the same lines, parks, right? So the district manages 17 different parks, and please indicate how important each of these amenities is to you or your family when you visit a park. And so you see a column there as well. We did give an option for I rarely or never think about these things or use these things, but things like restrooms, walking trails, picnic tables, parking, covered pavilions, the kind of things that you would think would be most important, and then going on down the list to, more just specific activities or more niche activities that not everyone engages in, so not surprising that they're towards the bottom, although it's still very important to some folks, obviously. Another question that we wanted to gauge public opinion on is whether the district is fiscally responsible and spends taxpayer money wisely. I'll say, this is the one question that we ask in all of our surveys, regardless of whether it's a county, city, town, school district, et cetera. 57 is a very high number. I'm not sure how you perceive it to be, but honestly, to be above 50 is a really good number. So to be at 57 is great. 35% don't have an opinion. You expect that, right? The average voter is not sitting around thinking about how the rec district is managing their money. And then you have 8% as well that disagree, probably for a lot of those same reasons that came up among the 6% on that previous question. So no red flag there, nothing going into the ballot measure that would make us say, we might need to pump the brakes on this.
I just saw 57 and was so disappointed.
No, not, not at all. Again, it's something where, I'm encouraged to see that 35%, honestly, because I think that's more like the honest answer, because the average person is not sitting around thinking about these issues. And so to have 57% agree and, on the flip side, only 8% disagree is a very strong place to be. We also, before we get into the specifics of the ballot measure, wanted to take just a minute for them to weigh in on the strategic plan initiatives. So we had a little bit of an introduction here. For those that aren't familiar, although it sounds like there was really solid engagement with the strategic planning process, I'm sure some folks took the survey that weren't super familiar with it, so we gave them a little bit of a description there. And then what we see here is that among these kind of three initiatives, there is overwhelming agreement among the general public, among these voters, with 92% agreeing that preserving our district's valued assets is important, including 69% saying it's very important. So that's what was ranked as, they all ranked as important. That was what ranked as most important. You see there, followed by aligning services with the district's evolving interests, 88% total important, 55% very important. And then providing world-class experiences, 82% total important, 48% very important. And so obviously, for those three initiatives, there's no concern among even the voters that don't use the facilities. They still look at those and they say, yep, that's what a rec district should be doing. That's perfectly in line with what with their vision as well. We then gave them some context. Before we continue, it's important to understand that the district has not made any decisions about placing a financing measure before voters. However, your responses will help us make that decision, and then say the following financing measure is being considered to increase funding for the district's operations and programs and allow for improvements throughout the district. After reading it, please tell us how you would vote. And this is the ballot language that was provided by David Bell at RBC. Without imposing a new tax or increasing existing taxes, shall Hyland Hills, and you can see how it goes on there with the bullet points for the kinds of things that this revenue would be spent on. And then you see, you kind of look at this thing, we're really asking someone to read all this. Well, they're going to read it on the ballot, right? So we want to get a true measurement of, okay, how do people read this? Are they turned off by the legalese that has to be there or not? And it turns out in this case, the results are pretty encouraging, right? 68% would vote yes and approve. Only 14% would vote no and reject. 18% are undecided. And, I think that's a higher undecided number than we typically see. But I think it's just because this language is a little bit hard to necessarily kind of wrap your brain around. I think what really explains the 68%, which is overwhelming support, is the words before the comma there, without imposing a new tax or increasing existing taxes. A lot of folks are going to read that, just kind of skim the rest and say, sounds good if my taxes aren't going up, right?
It seems like what also helps are the bullet points are very specific
Yes.
on where the money and the debt's going to go to. And it's funny is we always call it water world, but if you talk about the other surveys, people don't have a full understanding of what Hyland Hills is. So when we say water world, should we say water world amusement park? We internally say water world all the time, but to the general public. Yes.
Well, that's not a bad idea.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good point about the bullet points. I mean, it can go one of two ways, right? One is it's good to be specific about the list. The downside of it is that someone's going to say, well, I never go to Waterworld, and they're going to see Waterworld on the list and say, oh, that turns me off, right? And so that's not overwhelming, as you'll see here in a minute, but I do think in general it is important to kind of have that bullet point list, because if you don't have it, then it makes it seem like the money's going who knows where, right?
It's also a marketing opportunity on the ballot. Oh, Hyland Hills, oh, look at all the things that they provide. So.
Yeah.
What I noticed that I found very interesting, that if you look at the uninformed financing measure ballot test, and then you go to the informed, they're exactly the same.
They are exactly the same. And,
So when we inform people, In fact, when we inform people, it goes down.
And I think that's a little bit of kind of what I was talking about, is the people that find one thing to latch onto,
Yeah.
whether it's, oh, I never go to the ice center, or I never do this, or I never do that. So if only they take that out, I'd be fully gung-ho. I mean, and obviously that's not a large group of people, because the support still stays very high. And I also think, for any ballot measure like this, to be at 68% on the uninformed, you don't have a lot of room to grow anyway, right? Like, nothing's going to pass with 75 or 80% support, even if it's a measure like this that doesn't raise taxes. So, but yeah, no, I'll kind of speak to that in a minute. But I'm kind of glad you noticed that as well, because here, like you said, we gave them quite a bit of information. Right, and so we're going to now share some information about why the ballot measure is being considered, how the funds would benefit our community. After reading it, please tell us if they make you more likely to approve or more likely to reject it. And what's interesting is and this tracks with a lot of rec district work that we do, or work for municipalities on behalf of their parks and rec departments, is whenever you can talk about water conservation, that is something that is very appealing to voters, which makes sense. I mean, even the folks that don't have much use for most of the facilities in the district, when you talk about water conservation, that's something that they can really resonate with. And then just in general, talking about rec facility improvements and parks improvements, just at a general level, those things test very well. They think, okay, that's going to help, the park down the street that we always go to, or this facility that we always use, right? And you'll notice as we kind of go on down the list and get more specific, that's when fewer voters are saying that's going to make them more likely to approve, which is kind of an interesting dynamic, but one that's intuitive when it makes sense. So 77% are more likely to approve when you talk about security and safety upgrades. Again, that's something that's going to resonate with a lot of folks. And then just in general, making them aware of how many residents are served by the district, how large the district is, the kinds of facilities that the district operates. 74% are more likely to approve. That's just really an attempt to educate them. I didn't know that all these things were, like you said, even on the ballot, it's a marketing opportunity. And then we're going to start getting into specifics, and you see the numbers, they don't completely fall off, but 70% are more likely to approve knowing about aquatics improvements, compared to the 82% that are more likely to approve knowing on water conservation. So aquatics improvements, adventure golf and raceway, 2/3 are more likely to approve. And then 25% of total funding going to Water World, 62% more likely to approve. On down the list with the ice center and golf course and facility improvements, which is only at 50% more likely to approve, 23% much more likely. So again, the dynamic is we want to tell them, hey, here's everything that the district is providing. But the potential kind of landmine is that they're going to stumble over something and say, well, I don't agree with that. I wish they wouldn't spend money on that, right?
So when I'm looking at this, the way that I looked at this is that the people who responded were not favorable for us spending money at the golf course. Like, when they saw that we were going to spend money to improve the golf course, they're like, no.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say like that. It's not the reason. It's not driving them to vote yes, right? So 68% are still going to vote yes, even though only 50% are more likely to approve based on the golf course. So it's not a net positive, but it's not a definite negative either, right? Because we didn't see support actually drop from the uninformed. It just kind of stayed level.
Okay.
And so, like we've kind of been discussing here, this is what we call the informed ballot test. Informed meaning that they've gone through the information that we wanted to have them go through. And then we have them read the exact same ballot language. And as you pointed out, it's still at 68%, right? And in fact, the intensity kind of drops a little bit. You have lower saying definitely and a little bit higher saying probably. So again, just to reiterate why that's going on is it's because of the golf courses, or it's because of something else. Just on the margins, people see those and say, I don't really see the benefit in that for the community because I never use it. I don't know anyone who does. It's kind of one of those things where in the person's perception, in the respondent's perception, it would be better if that was left out, even though we're trying to have a kind of holistic and touch everything. And we do see this all the time, even, like for our school district clients, you want to make sure that, okay, every school within the district is getting some kind of benefit, but at the same time, they may think, well, they don't need that over there. I wish we got more here. It's like a competing interest kind of thing. We didn't want to leave it there. We wanted to get a sense of why that 68% would vote yes. And it tracks with a lot of the same reasons why they approve of the job the district is doing. They think community health and well-being is important. They think these kind of maintenance and upgrades are important. Right? They appreciate the need for accessibility and safety across the district's facilities. They do believe in the community and economic benefits of making these improvements. And then you also have the sustainability and environmental concerns where they appreciate the progress you're going to be able to make on that front with some of these improvements. Of the 16% who would vote no, they are bringing up things like the high debt and interest concerns, mismanagement and misuse of funds in their perception, high taxes and economic concerns. So you see that and you wonder, well, why is high taxes coming into play, right? The ballot language explains that taxes won't be increased. There's just some voters that are going to see the big numbers in the ballot language and think, well, those are big numbers, so that means coming down the road, it's going to affect me somehow, some way, regardless of what the ballot language says. And so you can see that kind of creep in here a little bit. And then you see different priorities, right? They're critical of how the funds are allocated. Again, particularly the focus on golf courses, water world, and the other facilities that they don't think enough people use. And that's just a perception thing, but it's there.
Yeah, and I wonder, so this is absolutely, I see that perception thing. How do we as a board then communicate that the reason the golf course is important to Parks and Recreation is because the golf course generates about $1.5 million of net profit that then we use to spend for park maintenance. And that's the reason we don't have high property taxes.
Right.
Like, so I don't know how you educate a population on, well, you might not use it, you're benefiting from it because your property taxes don't increase.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think it's just something that it's kind of just got to be drilled into the head of some voters. Again, it's not like we're upside down here. It's not like a majority of voters aren't already on board. But among those voters that are skeptical, it's, and I just flip back to the ballot test here. The pertinent line, right, is shall be payable from any available revenue of the district, right? And it says including property tax revenue. But what people don't see is that water world and the golf courses and things like that are things that you all have as part of your district that, the rec district down the road or the city down the road that's trying to take care of their parks and rec department, like you all are in an enviable position, right? Not every park and rec district in Colorado has that kind of revenue generator. And so I think you're like, the way you spelled it out is exactly right. We need to spend on these things, not because we think they're so much more important than everything else at a basic level, but because they are those revenue generators.
Yeah, they allow us to invest in our parks without raising property tax.
Right, and I think that last point is important too, right? Just emphasizing we don't want to raise property taxes and, to do some of these things, without relying on revenue from Water World and the golf courses by improving those and kind of keeping those up to speed would down the road involve an increase in property taxes. And then we just get into the survey demographics. Again, where possible, this is weighted to reflect what we expect turnout to look like, or on things like race or ethnicity is weighted to reflect the census demographics of the communities within the district. You see there, again, just income, tenure in Adams County, rent versus own, 4-year degree, things like that. Important to kind of see 54% of the voters within the district live within the city of Westminster. The next highest is the 28% that are in unincorporated Adams County. And then there's a drop off to the parts of Thornton, all of Federal Heights, obviously, and Arvada. And with that, I'll take any of the questions you all may have.
With these results, how does, just looking at it, well, so one, I thought 671 respondents was low. that was a little concerning for me, but with these results, in your opinion, does the ballot measure stand a chance of getting approved?
Yeah, it does. You know, and I wouldn't say 671 is low. I think for something like this, our kind of goal that I was hoping to hit was 700, but we would be comfortable with even 400 interviews in terms of the margin of error of the survey responses. And so 671 I was hoping to, like I said, to do a little bit better, but I don't think it's low. It's pretty average in terms of what you can expect for a survey of this nature. And the difficult thing is because you do have such a large number, even among the folks who took the survey, you have a large number that don't make much use of the district's facilities. So I'm sure there's quite a few folks who got the text message to take the survey and just said, well, I don't do anything with that, right? And, you know, it helps if we can say, which we do for other clients when it's a tax increase, you kind of say that in the text message, like, we want to know your opinion about a potential, you know, tax increase on the ballot. And then they think, oh, their ears start ringing, they want to take it. We couldn't necessarily do that in this case because it doesn't raise taxes, right? And so even trying to convey to them the importance of the, you know, ballot measure for the community, it's just something that doesn't resonate with quite as much a large population as something if it came from their city or their school district or things like that. So.
Hey, Marty, to your question, if 17% of the undecided voted no, it still passed.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so that's a good point. And 68 is it's a very strong place to be, right? What I've been telling all of our clients this year is that whenever you're starting out this high, really the only danger is that the ballot becomes so crowded and so long that voters don't even make it to the end of their ballot where there's a special district question on their ballot, right? And that's a little bit beyond your control. You can do all you can to educate folks about, you know, whatever the ballot title ends up being, you know, vote yes on 7A or whatever it ends up being called. But we're starting at a very high place of support. And again, I think that it really boils down to the opening clause of the ballot language, without increasing taxes or any new tax. I think a lot of folks see that and it resonates with them, so.
I would just add that having experienced these types of surveys in the field of education for 30 years, if we saw 67%, we'd be celebrating. Right, Don?
Yeah. Yep. Any other questions?
And it's interesting how it dovetails with the strategic plan and some of the things that we're saying. So,
Yeah, it is good to know that the general public is very much in line with the engagement process that came in through the strategic plan effort. Because obviously there's some folks that aren't gonna participate in a strategic plan at that level, but they are gonna vote, right? And so it's good to know that they kind of are symbiotic in that sense, so.
Ryan, thank you very much.
Of course.
Please take back that, at least as the board president, that this has been very helpful, and you guys have done a fantastic job of getting the information that we need in order to decide about a ballot.
Appreciate it. And any other questions you all may have, you can have staff reach out or reach out directly to us, and we'll get them answered, so.
All right, we are at the approval of treasurer's report, looking for a motion.
Move that the Board of Directors of Highland Hills Park and Recreation District approve the June 2024 Treasurer's Report as presented.
I second.
go ahead.
I second.
We have a motion and a tie for silver on the second. So now it's open for discussion.
Skylar, it looks like you get a phone call from.
I know, I kind of missed it.
Not that much, though, right?
Again, it's, you know, you'll look at the results here on a year-to-date basis, things that they trending very favorably. And I know there's another agenda item on here that kind of ties into this, but the results of June are good. July preliminary enterprise revenues, a little off from last year, but within 2%, so. No. Good year so far. The weather's been our friend.
Yes.
The weather has, I was wondering why it was off a little bit July over July. Any thoughts? Only because it was so nice and wonderful and beautiful. Like, I thought it would have been,
I think we had those hot stretches in July, so sometimes it's too hot, like for golf course and adventure golf. So as much as it's great here, and even sometimes it's too hot for Waterworld. So I suspect that that's what it is.
yeah,
And then last July, because we had such a poor June, we had a little bit of a kick in July.
pent-up demand. Yeah. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor of approving the treasurer's report, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Looking for a motion for approving of meeting minutes.
I move that the Board of Directors of Highland Hills Park and Recreation District approve the minutes of the board meetings of July 2nd and 9th, 2024 as written.
All right, we have the motion and a second. Discussion on the minutes of the board meeting.
Well, I don't have any questions about the minutes of the public board meeting. I did have some questions about the attorney's statement for July 2nd, for the July 2nd executive session, but Ellison's not here, so I would want to wait till we could ask those questions of her. And I don't know how we ask that.
And Margaret, yeah, I think executive session has to remain confidential.
Absolutely.
So we need to make sure that we follow that and perhaps talk with Allison when she returns and address whatever you're thinking.
Then maybe we forestall the approval until we can meet with her.
We can always come back and amend the minutes. So I think that we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. And all those in favor, say aye. Aye.
I disagree. No. I vote no.
Oppose?
I oppose.
That's okay. The minutes are approved 4-1. Communication and correspondence to the board?
I don't think that we have been sharing from the Board of Directors position all of the communication and correspondence to the board as set forth in our procedures document. And so I think I'd like to address that at the August 20th board meeting because I've received, because per our procedures, we're supposed to make those public in our public, and make them part of the public record. And I know that we've had some stuff from Waterworld, and we had some other items as it relates to Waterworld that we have not made public as part of our procedures. So I'd like to have a special session or a special designation at the communication and correspondence to the board at the next board meeting.
Margaret, I'm a little confused about that. I think if something comes to the board, it's our board members' responsibility to bring that to the attention of the board.
I will read what it says in our procedures. So give me a minute to get to it. is going to take me a second, but I sent it in a separate email that outlined where it was. It's section N, I think. So let's go.
So correspondence to the board, I get emails from someone that wants to know if I'm interested in the franchise sent to my Highland Hills email account.
That should be, so this is what it says. Board correspondence. So this is under section, it's on page 10, so let me tell you what section it is. Board members, officers, and personnel. So the duties of the Board of Officers and Members, the Executive Director, and the recording secretary are summarized here. And if you go to item N, it says board correspondence, emails and letters, including anonymous ones, addressed to any member or members of the Board of Directors are public records and will be shared with and reviewed by all board members and the Executive Director. The letters and emails sent in relation to the board agenda item will be read into the public record at the board meeting. Postal mail addressed to board members at the administration office are considered district business and will be opened by the Executive Director on and behalf of the board and made available to the addressees and the remaining board members. Posts to the district's social media page concerning public business will not be made part of the public record. So I don't think that we have been following this per our procedures because I have not been sharing the communication that I've been receiving, and I have received communication that I should have made brought to the attention of the board in public record.
So Margaret, every so often I get an email from a solicitor that's asking about selling things to the district. And I've brought some of those forward. I have not brought all of them forward because they're just phishing scams to try to, they send me an email saying they want to increase our financing and they have $50,000 worth of, or we're approved for $50,000 or $250,000 worth of those types of information. Typically, I just ignore those. I don't think that they need to come to the whole board. I can start doing that. I just received one that I did forward to Yvonne because I think that's where it goes, not to me. It was talking about a change of who holds our bonds, and that Yvonne said she would check into it and get back to us. So I leave it up to them to decide whether it comes out to the full board. But there's many things that come to board members that just are not really worth our time or energy. So if you're getting some that I don't know about, those are the ones I've gotten.
So you were copied on mine, and so I think I've received material ones that we haven't disclosed in public session that we should. And that's part of our procedures.
I'm still a little confused. So are you, if you've included me on something like that, did you, and I read through it, or did it go to Yvonne as well? Does it have to do with executive session?
I think we violated some protocol with executive session with our procedures, and that's why I take exception to the board minutes, because in any discussions that we had, it was with something that should have been made public prior to that.
Okay, I'm going to go back to executive session remains confidential, and we need to table that until we're able to talk to Allison and see which direction you want to go for on that.
But the emails do not. The emails per our procedures are not privileged per executive session.
I believe that they are, and I think that we need to,
I think
to
that,
involve legal counsel on that.
and so I just want the record to note that we have not shared communication to the board in accordance with our procedures.
Let's think of this.
And I think we have, but it went through executive session.
Well, it's supposed to be public record per our procedures. So we can leave it there for that. Per what I just read to you, that is a public record per our procedures.
There's also executive session, so we have to balance those. There's some gray areas in both of those. So as we've balanced it, executive session is different than public session. And for good reason.
So I think we should start to have communication and correspondence to the board, and that next meeting, we should address that.
So I need to ask the rest of the board, what's your appetite for adding an agenda item on August 20th to address correspondence to the board?
For us to discuss it then? Yes.
I believe that's what you're asking, isn't that right, Margaret?
Yeah, I think we discuss that and say that we should be sharing all of this information per our procedures.
Including executive session?
Well, no. The email that I got and that you got is something that we should have shared with the board right when we got it.
I want to be really careful just
Yeah.
when we're talking about executive session, that we're not waiving any privilege.
Exactly,
So if
and
we
so
could-
that's why I'm being very vague. We received emails that per our procedures,
this-
we should have shared.
I think we should wait.
Okay.
Just because I really want to protect privilege. As far as separately emails are concerned, of course, have your discussion. I think we should look at the CORA policies. There are certain requirements that we not disclose certain documents that are provided to members of the board, so we want to make sure that we're complying with that and make sure that the district policies comply with CORA requirements as well.
So that, it might be too early then for August 20th to have a discussion on it?
I think we can get you some advice by then.
And Margaret, I know you're being careful here, but without more information, I can only guess upon what you might be asking, and so I don't want to guess. I want to be thoughtful and understand what you're talking about, and I don't feel that I think if it happened in executive session, it needs to be confidential in executive session, and so if we're going to be talking about it on August 20th, we need to consult with legal counsel and figure out which way we're going.
Yeah, I think once we have more information, that'll help.
So the question still remains with the rest of the board, is that something that we should address at August 20th? And remember, this is it's a meet and greet, but we also have an agenda item probably to talk about the ballot issue on August 20th. We have to get that in before mid-September. And so looking at the timing of the ballot language and do we vote to move forward with the ballot language, we might have that agenda item also.
Well, we have a motion to schedule a board meeting that day.
We do.
So there is a board, if that motion passes, we have a board meeting that day, in addition to the town hall.
Correct.
Discussion.
Yeah, discussion.
Okay, I think the question is, I'll make it broader, trying to keep it simple, is all of us board members get emails from businesses, from members of the community and so on, expressing their questions or, concerns or compliments and so on. And the question is, what are we supposed to do with the emails that we get from the community to a board member? Or correspondence, a thank you or something like that? Is the spirit of that language that anytime we get an email to a board member, we distribute it to the other board members? I think we have to find out what the rules are, the spirit of that language.
Well, yeah, and where you draw the line, but I also want to say I really appreciate Margaret wanting complete transparency.
But again, it's fine, but what's
Where's the line? Right,
Exactly.
I get that.
Yeah, I always support transparency. I just don't think you guys really want to know that I've gotten 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 scam phishing emails that are asking us to increase our debt limit and contact them to find out that how to get another $90 million. I don't think that's a good use of our time, and I think that we can certainly have this conversation and decide, is it to board directors' best common sense of whether the board needs to hear this? Can we do that, or do we need to, like Mike said, the spirit of it? Or is it everything?
Well, what I would say is that in transparency, what is decided to withhold from the public, maybe the public should make the decision as to what they should and should not know. But you can hide behind the spam emails and not share relevant emails that should be part of public record. So while we all get spam emails, we all get other emails that we should address, and it should be brought forth in public session.
And I would say the ones that I've received, they should be brought forth, I have brought forth.
I will say the ones that I've received, there's one that I have not.
And once again, I can't guess. So we'll go back to the question or more discussion. August 20th, is this something that we'd like to have a study session on or have more conversation about? What would be our board's pleasure?
My suggestion is we put it to a future meeting past August 20th.
Well, we were supposed to have something at this meeting.
What does that mean?
Well, I can't talk about it because it's executive session.
Izuri, can you help guide us a little bit on that?
I think that it's your decision. If you want to hold a meeting or a discussion on August 20th, we can do that. We can provide legal advice, make sure that the policy is in compliance with CORA, and then kind of give you guidance on what that policy means. And I think that's totally doable. It's up to you when you want to schedule that.
Would that be an executive meeting, or would that be something we would discuss publicly?
You don't need to discuss the policy in executive session. If you want to discuss matters having to do with legal advice, then we should do that in executive session.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm a little confused. I don't seem to know enough about what the conversation is here. I can wait for the following meeting after August 20th as well.
Yeah, I don't see a particular reason to do it on August 20th unless it fits into our other agenda items. We have a meeting coming up in September as well.
Should we address it at the September meeting?
Well, I think if we're going to address what, I'm trying to figure out what you're wanting to address, I think we need to be able to talk to Allison and figure some of this out, and maybe the first step is to get the CORA report and do some more digging on how our policy impacts CORA and whether we're following the policy and what the spirit of the policy is. I think that might be our first step.
Well, and just so that everyone's clear, it's the Highland Hills Park and Recreation District Board of Directors Operations and Procedural Manual.
And Allison will be back in September?
Yeah, Allison will be back on Monday.
Oh, okay.
Mr. President, maybe I can make a suggestion. So the August 20th meeting that we were scheduled, you all have the meet and greet on August 20th, and it is stated at 5:30. We actually were trying to squeeze in a quick little meeting to talk about the ballot measure on August 20th too, so there's not really going to be a lot of time if you have people coming to see you all for the meet and greet to spend on board on district matters. So my suggestion would be to go ahead and push that to the September meeting.
That makes sense.
So I'll ask my fellow board directors, keep August 20th short with the ballot initiative and the meet and greet, and gather some more time with Allison and Azuri for September 3rd, 4th?
I think it's the 3rd.
I think it might be the 3rd. Is that what I'm hearing from directors?
Yeah.
Getting some affirmative there, Margaret? Okay, thank you. Yvonne, we're ready for the project tracker.
Thank you, Mr. President. So item number 1 on the tracker is the City of Westminster IGA. Letting you know that we kind of established a subcommittee, so we've got 2 of our staff members, Alan and Bob, are working with Lance Johnson and I'm going to lose his name. Alex at the city to try to really hone in on this IGA. I did put an item in here that we are a little concerned now about the timing with the recent change in the city leadership. So we will continue to work through that. I do have lunch scheduled with the deputy city manager in the next couple of weeks, and so I'll hopefully have more information to bring back to you at the September meeting on the progress there. Moving to item 5, which is the Park and Recreation Master Plan Committee. Just wanted to let you know that we received bids for the waterfront entrance project as well as the sports complex phase 2 project. Both you'll see on the agenda this evening. Recommendations are presented to you, and the one for acceptance and one for rejection. The committee is also now working on budget estimates for potential upgrades to both Commissioners and Rotary Park with the intention of applying for grants for both of those improvements on the August grant cycle. Just as a reminder, we're trying to make sure that we put forth projects on every single grant cycle. So that cycle actually just opened up, I think, this month, and we're working through what those budgets look like to make some improvements at those parks. And then the master plan for Kamnish Karstens is underway. So I know the gentlemen that are here tonight will be very interested in that. Hopefully you have seen some of the outreach. I know that a survey, an online survey will be going up about improvements to those parks. So hopefully you guys will do that. And if you don't see that, let us know and we'll direct you to where that's at. And then finally, item 10, obviously the district strategic plan. Big celebration here that plan is now complete. So we are a long way from being done, as Margaret talked about this evening, with implementation plans and so forth. But I think that we're all very proud of what we have assembled here. Big kudos to Skylar. He really was relentless on keeping this thing moving, and it was a long project, but really thrilled with the amount of community engagement that we got with it. And I think for the board's perspective, I think those 3 pillars moving forward will help in the decision-making progress. Margaret's absolutely right. We don't have the kind of money that we're going to need for all the improvements that we're going to need, but that's why it's back then up to us as staff to come to you and then work with the board on prioritizing and figuring out how we can make the best moves with the money and resources that we have or can get. So really happy to have that done and really proud of the project. And then just as another note, I did put a draft resolution as well as draft ballot language in your packet. We don't need any action on that tonight, but that ties in with the Magellan survey results for you all to think about as we move towards that August 20th meeting date. So please let me know if you have any questions or concerns on that information. If you'd like it electronically, I can forward it to you electronically as well.
Can I ask a question about this? Is this coming from Butler Snow?
Yes.
Okay.
That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you. We're now in quarterly reports. I just want to give a shout out to Val for being the one person who added a fun fact. the Turtles and the Eagles.
It wasn't about the Denver Nugget who's going to the Highland Hills Golf Course now? I can't remember his name. Something. Aaron Gordon, yeah. Anyone want to, yeah.
The Costco gift card program, that'll just get pushed
No, actually, we're in Costco already, and we had to replenish. Just today, Kelly took additional stock over to 3 of the stores, so pretty excited about that, yeah. We got in and it's moving. So we're in 3 stores, I believe, is that right, Skylar? Yeah.
and the season ends like Labor Day-ish.
Yes. Yeah, we certainly didn't get in as early as we had liked, but again, very happy with the results so far. We were really thrilled with the placement that they gave us in the store, so we got end cap placement, even though we didn't pay for the end cap placement. So, and like I said, because it's doing so well, I think that's a very encouraging sign, and we've really gotten over the big hurdle that we've tried to get over for the last 2 years to get in there. So now, going into next year, it should be hit the ground running.
Very detailed report. Thank you. Thanks to staff. Time and effort they put into this.
Any other comments, questions about the quarterly report? All right, we're at the attorney's report.
There's a legal report in your board packet. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have.
I have a question. So when you're in executive session, are you able to propose a policy, vote, rule, or do anything like that?
You can vote on things like if you're deciding a position to take. So if you're going to say, we're going to negotiate, should we negotiate in this way, or should we negotiate in that way, you can take those positions. No formal votes should be taken.
So if you were to have an informal vote, it wouldn't be on the record because it would be confidential, correct?
If it is for those purposes, for negotiating or to determine a position, to determine council's position, but not to take a formal vote that is going to take action.
Okay.
Who's paying the cost of the subpoena, the record?
That would be the district. The subpoena, hopefully it won't be a huge cost. It doesn't have to do with Water World operations, but unfortunately, when the district receives a subpoena request from a court, we have to respond to it.
Were the police called?
Wait, what?
There was an incident at the park involving guests. It doesn't involve the district, but we were subpoenaed as part of this case.
Was it in the parking lot or on activity premises?
It was inside the park, and we had an off-duty officer working, so that officer responded and really took ownership of that from that point forward. But we created a little bit of paperwork.
Any other questions? Going to new business, looking for a motion for the adoption of strategic plan.
Me. I move that the Board of Directors of Highland Hills Park and Recreation District adopt the 2024 Highland Hills Park and Recreation District Strategic Plan as written.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
I asked this of the consultant, and I'd like to get your guys' input. What were the things that were most eye-opening for you or that you took away from the plan? Because I know I've been very vocal about it, but I'd like to hear from you all.
To me, the plan was consistent with my philosophy for the district was maintain and improve the existing assets. That there was a lot of deferred maintenance based on just the initial tour I got when I joined the board, I could see it. And it's like, invest, take the money we have, invest into the facilities.
I agree with Mike. I think that was something that just aligned with my values, is that we need to protect what we have first before we start looking at building new facilities or anything else. Let's take good care of some of the things that might have been deferred maintenance. And then also, I think the strategic plan really does give us, the staff primarily, great guidelines to then start looking at that implementation plan, and that we as board directors need to just monitor that that's being done and not try to micromanage that process.
One of the things that I took away with that is that the capital improvement plan, knowing the level of deferred maintenance, that the board is going to have to prioritize where we invest the dollars first based on staff recommendations. Because while it's not micromanaging, I think that there's guidance that would be needed. And the other thing that I was surprised at, that I don't know if you guys saw, the median age in the district is 36 years old. That came back much younger than I thought it was gonna come back. And so that is something to consider as well. Also, if you look at the median household income levels across the district, there is wide disparity. And the median household income levels for Westminster are below Colorado and national levels, which I found a little surprising, which then helps kind of guide the recreation services and the offerings that we have as well. Because, deferred maintenance came about, there's a page in the plan that says, here's the program and offerings that you need to think about, here's the infrastructure, and here's your mission statement. And so I thought those were eye-opening conclusions that I wasn't expecting that as much as it came across.
Other comments? So all those in favor of approving the district strategic plan as written, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. We have in our packet the recommendation about the entrance to Waterworld. So before we discuss it, I'm looking for a motion.
I move that the Board of Directors of Highland Hills Park and Recreation District reject all bids for the Waterworld Front Entry project and authorize staff to continue to plan for a consolidated project.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Yeah, you know, we're seeing other projects with opinion of costs and the bids coming back in line with that. I'm not sure we spent a lot of effort in the opinion of cost stage to figure out where we were, using our vendors for that, and yeah, maybe timing, I'm not sure. It's a tight deadline, that's for sure.
When we say the consolidated project, that means that instead of just doing cutting away the front entry project. We're gonna do the front entry and the Cove project together. And one of the reasons we're doing that is because it was super expensive and we would have had redundant costs if we did them separately.
Yeah, I think given where the bids have come back, initially, if you recall, our concept was to do both projects at the same time, the front gate and the Cove project, and really that's where we were tracking. When we started stepping into the design stage and we saw the potential for a price point that, you know, it was appealing to look at that as a standalone project. However, going through this exercise now, it's just come in so high. Our hope is that doing this all as one project, certainly we're going to hope that we see some efficiencies which will translate into cost savings, because now that becomes a much bigger project.
And I agree with Don. I think we just need to watch the timelines. Hopefully, we're not pushing too far out. Any other discussion? All those in favor of rejecting the project bids, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Highland Hills Sports Complex Project Phase 2.
I move the board of directors, Hyland Hills. Sorry. I can see this, I move the board of directors, Hyland Hills, award the bid. Hyland Hills Sports Complex Phase 2 project to Kirsch Construction, Inc. in the amount of $2,430,696 and authorize the executive director to execute the contract on behalf of the.
I second.
We have a motion and a second, and information in our packets. Any discussion?
I was a little confused about the original, so the original project estimate was 4.5 million, but the bids came back way lower, like at 2.6 million. Why was there, am I reading that right, one? Am I understanding that right? And if I am, why was there such a significant disparity? That's my first question. And then it's matching grant funds. So we got a matching grant from Adams County up to 2.7 million. So if we spend 1 million, they give us 1 million. If we spend 2 million, they give us 2 million. So does that mean then for this one, if we spend 2 million, they're going to give us 1.2 million? So those are, why the big disparity, and then how does the grant proceeds work?
So I'm going to answer your second question, and I'm going to let Alan answer the first question.
Okay.
The matching is based on the total project cost. So I'm just going to do it in round numbers. If we spend 4 million, if the total project comes in at 4 million and we spend 4 million, the county reimburses us a little more than half, but let's just say 2 million. So it just, they will never provide us more money than we have spent on the project, and it is a percentage, I think it's a 60% match.
And they'll only go up to 2.7 million.
Correct.
So that's their cap.
Yes.
So, okay, got it. I wanted to make sure I understood that.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's 60 cents over the dollar.
Yes.
Yeah.
60% matching.
If we spent 2 million, they'll give us 1.2.
Correct. Alan, do you want to talk about the first part?
You bet. Margaret, the additional costs of the project are going to include the shelter purchase, the design engineering, other infrastructure improvements, and contingencies. So the short story is this isn't the whole project. This is just what we bid out to the contractor specifically. So we'll still buy the shelters, we'll pay for design and engineering, we'll pay for infrastructure improvements, and then other contingencies as we go. So we do expect it to come under the $4.5 million estimate, but by the time everything comes in, it'll probably be pretty close to that.
Got it. So this is just the contract. They're not doing everything.
Yeah, this is.
They're only doing.
Correct.
An X amount. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, this is phase 2.
Well, this is phase 2, but it's phase 2 only the contract with Kirsch, because there's the other costs that are outside of the contract with Kirsch that are not here because we don't need to contract them out because we're going to do them in-house?
Well,
Or
we will,
haven't
we
decided
have
yet?
already contracted out a lot of the construction drawings and design. So that's already been paid for by us. We're gonna get reimbursed for that.
Okay.
So those were different, stakeholders in the project, right? And different contractors. So this just covers the construction contractor for these specific improvements.
I guess what would be helpful then is when we get something like this, if the original project estimate was 4.5 million. So I'd want to know that, yep, we're coming in around our estimates, but of that 4.5 million, we've spent 2 million to date, 3 million to date, whatever that looks like, because it's not just under one contract. If that would be helpful for me. I don't know if it would be helpful for the rest of the board to understand where we're at in that project completion.
We do track all of that. We have to, so we can get reimbursed for these projects with Adams County. So the accounting standards on these are very high, because they want to know that the costs went to these specific projects. So for everything we've ever done with a grant, matching grant, so everything from Sherrillwood to Clear Creek Valley to the sports turf we did last year, everything gets tracked as a whole project. But for example, last year, the turf contractor was 2.4 million, but that whole cost of that project was 3.11, because we had to do other drainage and infrastructure improvements on that as well.
And then, yes, absolutely, I understand that now. So now with this particular project, it's approved up to 4.5 million, and we have spent how much of that 4.5 million?
So what we've spent so far is just in design and engineering, so we could put this out to bid. I don't have that exact number, but we can certainly get it. I don't have it out handy.
So if we add this $2.4 million contract and the design and engineering, I don't know how much, let's just say design and engineering was 600,000, that puts us at 3 million. So we've encumbered or used 3 million of the 4.5 million, rough.
Correct.
Okay, that's like, that would be helpful information, just to know how far we are and stuff like that, because I know that we have to have very strict records to prove to Adams County to reimburse us. So thank you. That's what I was kind of asking in a very uneloquent way.
So Margaret, are you kind of recommending that the board looks at adding that to the project tracker information? Or is that something that the board wants to try to figure that out? So it's not jumbled too much or buried too much? I'm trying to figure out what the rest of the board's appetite is for how that might look.
Yeah, I would think it could just be one of the projects on the project tracker, and Yvonne could just provide an update of where we are against the 4.5 million.
That sounds good to me, because that's all I really wanted to know.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to the rest of the board?
Sure, that's fine.
Any other discussion on sports complex phase 2 bid? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Just to make Mike super happy, we're going to go to the maintenance projects funding. That information is also in your board packet. So I'm looking for a motion about, I can get it off my fingers, additional funding of up to 1.5 million for additional maintenance projects as defined.
Did you just make the motion?
I did not, but I
Okay.
can if you'd like me to.
No, I can. It's just, you used a lot of the words. I move that the Board of Directors approve additional funding of up to $1.5 million for additional maintenance projects as defined.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Mr. President, I wanted to point out that we did provide you with a revised memo. We had inadvertently left off several Waterworld items from the list, which Bob Owens caught this afternoon, so I apologize for that, Bob. But just want to let you know that that list, once the funding is approved, the staff will go through the list and tweak it to figure out which projects can get done before the end of the year, because that's important if you're providing the funding for this fiscal year. So once you give us the green light, we will work together with Bob and Alan and identify the projects that are going to get done this year, and then, like the memo says, come back to you if anything comes in over 120,000.
I have a question. Do you have a question, Mike?
I was just saying, we have restrooms on here, which is a concern for the community. We have insulation improvements to make, reduce our heating costs and so on, be more energy efficient, and then taking care of the facility, so we balance it out between the community and maintaining our facility.
I will say that, yes, absolutely. And this is where I think I struggle with as a board member, is we have we have a lot of money going into the golf courses and adventure golf and those entities and Waterworld, but we don't have any go into the parks, or very little. So I'm just wondering, how does it align with priorities, especially on the strategic plan?
Yeah, so the previous item you just approved was millions going into park. Oh, I said the previous item that you all just approved was millions of dollars going into park, and you guys have approved a lot of projects in parks.
Yeah.
So if you remember correctly, and part of the master plan committee's work is identifying projects that can go towards the mill levy extension money that was passed in 2020, and leveraging that money into grants that are, again, providing us 60% of the cost of those improvements. So that's where, when you ask where the money is going into parks, that's where we have put a lot of money into parks in the last 4 years now.
Absolutely. Like, I'm not opposed to any of this. I'm just wondering how we include money for when we have an additional 1.5 million. Because it's doing everything that it said is where there's deferred maintenance, we're doing it, but we're not spreading the love.
And I think we are. I think that staff is analyzing what's highest priority, and then we're trying to tackle some of those things, the deferred maintenance. So we're spreading the love, but only where the love is needed. And so maybe some of our areas are not getting quite the love. If we were to say everybody gets 1% of our budget, that doesn't seem to make sense. I think we need to be thoughtful, and our strategic plan says we need to be. So,
And it'll be the fiscal year 25 budget.
correct, as well as the master plan committee, which we hope to maybe look at different committee structures and have a capital improvement plan committee also that would be addressing how some of this is financed and funded.
Well, I agree. I would like to see a diversification of facilities and not such a concentration in just the golf course, adventure golf, and Waterworld. Well, ball food. So that's just a request, a thought, something to think about.
Any further discussion? All in favor of this motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Mike asked me earlier if I ever do the motions, and so I'm going to go ahead. Typically, as the president, you ask for motions and seconds, and you kind of stay out of it a little bit, but I think just to make Mike more happy, I move that the Board of Directors of Highland Hills Park and Recreation District approve the Butler Snow Engagement Letter as written and authorize the Executive Director to execute the contract on behalf of the district.
Second. Yep.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Staff comments?
Yeah, we've worked with Butler Snow on our bond issues and ballot questions for years with great success, so we are very confident in our recommendation to hire them. I do want to point out, I know that you all have the engagement letter there, I do want to point out that if the ballot measure doesn't pass, there won't be any fees going with this whole thing, so. Yeah, no, Butler Snow is amazing to work with, so. What you had in your packet tonight, she prepared that, there's been no bills for anything that she's done so far.
I did notice that there would be no charge for the bond if it doesn't pass.
And I want to correct myself if I said bond, the ballot measure, it's not a bond issue.
Yeah. I have read lots of engagement letters for bond counsel for entities, and my experience has been that Butler and Snow is very good in Colorado, so I'm pleased with that.
Any more discussion? All those in favor of the Butler Snow engagement letter, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Looking for Mike or Margaret to make a motion on the executive director compensation.
I can do that. I move that the Board of Directors of Highland Hills Park and Recreation District approve the compensation adjustment for the executive director as detailed and recommended by the Finance Committee, which I will also add is based on the recommendations from the Rocky Mountain Employers Council.
No, I second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion?
What's the cost of that, part of that process to the budget? I didn't see that in there. To catch up from 2023?
That's current.
Yes, what's that total number?
Any other comments from the Finance Committee on this one?
No, again, this is just a follow-up to the meetings we had last year in the summer, where the board reviewed the market survey for this position, but no actions were taken in '23. And so it's a little bit of shame on us for not taking actions back in '23. doing the right thing now here in '24.
Yeah, I think it's long overdue. We kind of dropped it back after we went through the process of figuring out what the salary ranges were. I think after we had that conversation, we kind of let it drop. And so I think this, I want to support the Finance Committee as they've moved through that. So any other discussion?
Well, again, we have an excellent leader for the district here, executive director, and appreciate all of her efforts. And this is just to recognize her contributions to the district in her leadership role and the experience she brings to the district for years of service here.
And I'd say, and for the financial well-being of the district as it's improved over COVID those years, and we've been able to do a lot of things, and so I would add that as well.
I would support all of those comments.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Looking for a motion for the board study session.
I move that the Board of Directors schedule a study session for Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024, at 4 p.m. to discuss the implementation of the Highland Hills Park and Recreation District Strategic Plan. I'll be there.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
It's the day after Labor Day. Some people like to make that a long week, take that week off so that you get the Monday off. No.
Take until 3 o'clock that day, next day.
I'll be there.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And it looks like we have one more motion.
I move that the Board of Directors schedule a meeting for Tuesday, August 20th, 2024 at 5:30 at the Highland Hills Sports Center located at 4201 West 94th Avenue, Westminster, Colorado.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. So I think the discussion on that is that that's also our meet and greet, and we hope to fit in some conversation or action on the ballot measure. So that would be one of our agenda items.
Will
Is
we
that-
use one of the rooms in the back there and have signage and so on for anybody that wants to come
Yes, we will.
into that room?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm looking at you two. Thank you. And then, this, I have, what is this for? This is just primarily to discuss the ballot measure, right?
Yes, if the board decides to proceed with the ballot measure, you have to do it at that meeting to provide enough time to get the question translated into Spanish. So it's a timing issue.
All those in favor of the August 20th board meeting with the meet and greet, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Board of Directors, open discussion.
Just want to notify other board members here, Margaret and myself, met with our auditors to review their audit report. Again, a draft of the annual comprehensive financial report for the year ended December 31st, 2023. You can see my flaggies here, number of comments, questions. The auditors are reviewing, addressing, staff's making some edits to the draft here, and so that we should be getting back to Margaret and I on our open items. So again, a well thought out process this year by running the audit report through the audit committee, getting that extra level review and questions to the auditors and staff. So we'll let you know once it's been approved.
And I would like to commend Mike on what he did and the value that he added going through that audit report this last time. I think it will probably be the best report produced that I've read through. And so, thank you very much, Mike, for the efforts that you put into that.
You're welcome. Again, each of us have our areas of expertise, and so all of us contribute to the goals of the district.
Yep.
Yeah, I want to also thank the Finance Committee, Margaret and Mike and Yvonne and whoever else is on there, somebody over there probably, Skylar, for taking those reins and allowing that work to happen in a committee level instead of at the board level. So thank you for all of that, and thank you for bringing your recommendations to us. It's been very helpful, I think.
Yeah, and we said in the committee meeting that we didn't have to bore everybody on the board with our very technical questions, and how you would appreciate that, so.
I do appreciate that. Thank you. Other open discussion? Margaret, board meeting action recap.
I only have one. And that's for Yvonne to provide updated project cost spends relative to overall budget on the project tracker. Did I say that right? For
Sports complex.
yeah, okay, so it's just for the sports complex, not just all projects? Just the, okay, just the, for just phase 2.
Let's start with that one and see how it goes. Rather than adding all the projects to the project tracker, that's pretty lengthy and
Or what was on-
difficult. So let's start with that one. The other thing that I remember is that we've asked Yvonne and Azuri to work with Allison on possible clarification around our board policies on disclosure of board communication or correspondence with the board.
Yeah, public correspondence to the board, I think is how it's read. They're going to look at our procedures, and then also, I think, clarification on, answer your question with regard to executive sessions.
Voting.
Yeah, voting in executive sessions or informal voting.
Anybody have anything else? Then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Okay.
That was one of our long ones, yeah.
There was a ton of information.
We went through it pretty quick, though.
We did.
It took me longer to read it all.
I know.
It took me literally probably 4.5 hours to go through everything.
Margaret, don't leave us out.
I'm not sure, you were ill or you had a back issue or something.